Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have part 10 of Best Friends by Jacqueline Wilson, continuing from chapter 15. My heart sank when I saw Flora. She was exactly as I'd imagined, only more so. She had long blonde hair gently waving way past her shoulders, big blue eyes and pale creamy skin like rose petals. She was daintily skinny, with a delicate neck and pointy elbows, but her long legs had shapely dancer's calves. She wasn't wearing anything fancy, just a t-shirt and shorts, but the t-shirt was small enough to show off her flat tummy, and the shorts were the sort you'd wear to a disco, not the baggy kind that make your bottom look saggy. "This is Flora, Gemma," Alice said. She pronounced her flowery name as if it were very special. She was looking at Flora as if she was a princess and Alice was her little serving maid. Auntie Karen was dancing similar attendance on Flora's mum. She was like Flora, but in full bloom. Uncle Bob couldn't stop looking at her too. She was wearing white trousers, very similar to Auntie Karen's, but she looked very different in them. Uncle Bob looked as if he was longing to pat her bottom too. He managed to avert his eyes just long enough to look at Flora's dad and offer him a beer. Auntie Karen tutted irritably and said she'd made a special jug of Pimm's for everyone. I didn't know what Pimm's was, but it looked very pretty, like dark lemonade with lots of fruit, and mint leaves bobbing about like little boats. My throat was very dry. I swallowed hopefully, even though there was only 4 glasses standing beside the jug. It was a very big jug. I watched Auntie Karen carefully pouring. She only used up half the lemonade stuff. "Please, may I have a little Pimm's too, Auntie Karen?" I asked, careful to say it very politely. Auntie Karen sighed as if I was being deliberately cheeky. "Don't be ridiculous, Gemma," she said. Auntie Karen raised her eyebrows at Flora's mum. Flora sniggered. I don't know what's so funny," I said. "Pimm's is alcoholic," said Flora. "Surely everyone knows that." She dug Alice in the ribs, and Alice giggled. "Of course I know that Pimm's is a little bit alcoholic," I said, sticking my chin in the air. "I happen to be allowed to drink alcohol." "As if your mother would allow any such thing," said Auntie Karen. "I didn't say my mother. I frequently have a lager with my grandad," I said. I wasn't exactly telling whopping great fibs. Grandad had let me have one sip out of his can once, just so I could see what it tasted like. It tasted horrible, as a matter of fact. Uncle Bob burst out laughing. "You're a caution, Gemma," he said. "That's one word for her," said Auntie Karen. "Now, I've made you girls a jug of real lemonade. Take it down to the end of the garden and leave us in peace. You can carry the tray, Flora. I know you'll be careful." We went out into the garden in procession, Flora first, bearing the tray of clinking glasses, Alice scurrying second with the jug carefully clutched against her chest, and me trailing in the rear, not trusted to carry anything at all. The end of the garden had exciting possibilities. There were so many bushes, we were mostly out of sight of the grown-ups, sitting on the green garden furniture. The grass grew tuftily around our ankles here, and big white weedy flowers grew as high as our heads. "We could play jungles, Alice," I said excitedly. "Play jungles?" said Flora. "Gemma's good at pretend games," said Alice quickly. Flora blinked her blue eyes rapidly in a silly way to express astonishment. "I haven't played pretend games for years," she said. "Still, you're Alice's guest, Gemma, so I suppose it's polite to let you." "I'm not Alice's guest. I'm her best friend," I said fiercely. "Let's have our lemonade," said Alice. "You look very hot, Gem." I was burning all over. I could have drunk a lake of lemonade and still been boiling. This was my one and only special day with Alice. Why did Flora have to barge in and start spoiling things? Now we couldn't play any proper games. All Flora seemed to want to do was talk. She talked about their Egyptian project and how she'd found all this stuff on the internet and printed it out. Alice said she was clever. I said there wasn't really anything clever in printing stuff out. I tried to tell them heaps of stuff about the Egyptians, but they stopped listening. Flora talked about ballet and how she'd been picked to do a solo for their end-of-term performance. Alice said she was brilliant. I said I thought ballet was silly and modern dancing was much more fun. I tried twirling and tapping, but I tripped and Flora laughed. Alice did too. Flora talked about her riding lessons and her pony, Nutmeg. Alice said she was lucky, and she couldn't wait to get her own pony too. I said I was getting a white pony called Diamond. As soon as Flora opened her mouth, I said, "I knew you called them greys, but my Diamond was as white as snow." "Isn't he, Alice?" I said. "She hasn't really got a pony, has she?" said Flora. "Well," said Alice. She didn't say no. She didn't have to. "Oh, I see, a pretend pony," said Flora, and she clicked her teeth and galloped. She'd never seen me pretending to ride Diamond, but she was horribly accurate. "Nay!" Flora snorted, tossing her head, trying to make Alice laugh at me again. Alice bent her head, pulling up a clump of long grass. She started plaiting some strands of it together. Her hair fell over her face, so we couldn't see if she was laughing or not. I watched her neat little fingers carefully plaiting. "What are you making?" said Flora. I knew what she was making. "It's just grass jewellery," said Alice. It wasn't any old jewellery. It was a friendship bracelet. I held my breath as she finished plaiting. Then she looked up and smiled at me. She wound it round my wrist and tied up the ends. I took hold of her hand and we squeezed each other's thumbs. "That looks cool. Make me one too," Flora demanded. Alice obediently made her one. It turned out bigger and better this time because she used longer grass and she divided it more evenly. But I didn't care. I had the first bracelet, the real friendship bracelet. "Let's go and dress up in all your real jewellery, Alice," said Flora. "Can I wear the silver charm bracelet?" What did she know about Alice's jewellery? And how could she ever think she could wear my favourite charm bracelet with the little silver Noah's Ark? I felt as if the weeny giraffes and elephants and tigers were biting me with tiny razor-sharp teeth. Alice divvied when we were upstairs in her bedroom. She opened up the jewellery box and watched the little ballet dancer whirl around and round. She ran her fingers through all her treasures. The gold heart on the chain, the tiny baby bracelet, the jade bangle, the silver locket, and the Scotty dog sparkly brooch. She tried putting every single one of her rings on one finger, the Russian twisted gold and the garnet and all the Christmas cracker jewellery. She didn't touch the silver charm bracelet. Flora reached over and snatched it up. "I just love this little bracelet," she said, flicking each charm. "I especially love the Noah's Ark. There are tiny little animals inside. Gemma, look." "I know," I said. "It's my favourite too. I always get to wear it when we dress up." "I asked first," said Flora. Alice looked at me helplessly. "OK," I said, shrugging. "You wear it then, Flora." I decided not to mind too much. Alice had made the first friendship bracelet for me. That was what mattered. I was going to wear it for ever and ever. Alice and Flora decked themselves up in all their jewellery. "Would you like to wear my pink nightie like a grown-up dance dress, Gemma?" Alice offered. "No thanks," I said. "I hate pink, you know I do." I suddenly realised how rude that sounded in the midst of Alice's immensely pink bedroom. "Pink clothes?" I corrected myself. "Pink's perfect for furniture and curtains and walls and stuff. I just don't go on a bundle on pink dresses." I went over to the windowsill and picked up Melissa. "She doesn't like them either," I said, unbuttoning her pink satin frills. "Careful with Rosebud. She's a very precious antique doll," said Flora. "I know she is. And what's all this Rosebud rubbish? Her name's Melissa." "Yeah, but that's a yuck name. Rosebud's much prettier, and it matches her rosy dress. I gave it to her specially," said Flora. "I gave Melissa to Alice specially," I said, easing her out of the pink frilly dress and dropping it onto the carpet. Melissa looked so much happier in her long white drawers and petticoat. "You couldn't possibly have bought her an antique doll," said Flora. "Alice said you and your family are really poor." Alice's cheeks went as pink as the rosebud frock. "I didn't exactly say that, Flora, and Gemma did give me the doll, only I still feel bad about it. Would you like her back now, Gem?" I struggled, hugging Melissa hard against my chest. It was almost like hugging my grandma. "It's okay. You can still keep her, but promise she can stay being Melissa. She hates the name Rosebud." "She's a doll, Gemma. She can't think," said Flora. That's all she knew. Melissa's dark glass eyes were fixed on Flora, hating her, and I hated her too. Then Auntie Karen called us to say that tea was ready. She'd laid it all out on the garden table, with a yellow and green check tablecloth and matching napkins. The food itself picked up the yellow and green theme: cucumber sandwiches, golden slivers of quiche and pizza, green salad, lemon tart and cheesecake. I looked around anxiously. Where's my cake, Auntie Karen?" "Oh, yes, sorry, dear, I forgot," said Auntie Karen. "Still, the table's a bit full now. Perhaps we should save it till later." "But I won't be here later," I said. "Grandad's coming for me soon. Please, let's have my cake now. We can make room for it, easy peasy." I tried, demonstrating, moving the plates around. All right, careful. I'll do it, Gemma," said Auntie Karen. She went into the kitchen and brought out my cake on a white plate. It was richly chocolate and resplendent, with Alice and Gemma carefully iced over the top, and little rosettes all around. "Oh, Gemma," said Alice, "it's a wonderful cake." "My goodness," said Auntie Karen. "Don't tell me you made it yourself, Gemma." "It looks very yummy," said Uncle Bob. He smiled at me encouragingly. "I think I'll cut myself a great big slice." "Oh, no, please. Alice and I have to cut it together," I said, rushing to stop him. Auntie Karen sighed. "Whose little tea party is this, Gemma?" she said, raising her eyebrows at Flora's mum again. "Please can we cut the cake, Mum?" said Alice. "Oh, very well. You girls can cut the cake," said Auntie Karen. "Then maybe we'll be able to eat our tea in peace." She took the cake knife and handed it to Flora. "Not Flora," I said. "It's just for Alice and me." I suppose it sounded horribly spoilt and rude, but I couldn't help it. Auntie Karen glared at me. Now you're going too far, Gemma. Flora, dear, you go ahead and cut the cake. No, you don't understand. It's so Alice and I can make a special wish, I said desperately, elbowing my way nearer my precious cake. Flora still had the cake knife. She smiled at me. I'm going to have my special wish first, she said, and she pressed the knife deep into the creamy chocolatey topping. I couldn't bear it. My hands reached out. They clasped the plate. No, Gemma, no, Alice shouted. I couldn't stop myself. I picked the cake up and I thrust it right in Flora's smug pink face. Chapter 16. Get in the car, said Grandad. Blooming heck, Jem. You don't do things by halves. You've really done it now. You've really done it. I knew that. I knew Auntie Karen would stab me with her cake knife if I ever came visiting again. I knew Flora would never ever let me email Alice now. I knew I couldn't be Alice's best friend anymore. I'd acted like such a crazy person. She probably looked on me as her worst enemy. She was mopping Flora up now, still wiping cream out of her eyebrows and chocolate sponge out of her long blonde hair. Alice won't want to see me ever again, I wept. I think you're mistaken, said Grandad, looking round. There was Alice, running out of the house towards me. Melissa in her arms. Auntie Karen was shouting after her furiously, but Alice took no notice. Here, Jem, she panted, thrusting Melissa through the car window at me. You have her back. It's only fair, she's yours. I never called her Rosebud. That was just Flora. Hal, I'm sorry I chucked the cake at Flora. It was our cake and our wish. I know. Flora was asking for it. Oh, Jem, her face. Alice suddenly burst out laughing, and I did too. Auntie Karen started running towards us, shouting. Uh-oh, better get going, Jem, said Grandad. I leaned right out the window and gave Alice one last hug. We're still best friends, I said as Grandad drove off. Of course we are, Alice shouted over her shoulder as Auntie Karen hauled her back into the house. I sank back on the seat, still giggling. You're a very bad little girl. It's not the slightest bit funny, said Grandad sternly. I know, I said, holding Melissa tight, burying my nose in her soft silky hair. I stopped giggling. I started sobbing instead. Oh, Gemma, come on now, darling. I didn't mean to make you cry, said Grandad, patting my knee. It's me that's making me cry, Grandad. You've been lovely to me and arranged this trip, especially. I'm the one who mucked it all up. I always do. I can't seem to help it. And even though Alice and I are still best friends, we'll never be able to see each other now. What am I going to do? I started crying harder. I know she's Flora's best friend too. What? Oh, Cakeface, said Grandad. I snorted through my sobs. Not that it's a laughing matter, said Grandad. If your mum got to hear about it, she'd hang, draw and quarter you. Young Gemma, you won't tell on me, will you, Grandad? What do you take me for, said Grandad. I'm no snitch. Now, listen to me, Jem, darling. Maybe Alice has got the right idea. You'll still be here, absolutely, the bee's knees best friend. But she's got the comfort of having Flora, Cakeface, as her everyday friend. Maybe you should count your blessings, that you've got an everyday pal too. I blinked at Grandad. Who? Grandad shook his head at me. Who do you think? Come on, Gemma. Who do you have the most fun with? I knew who Grandad was getting at, but I wasn't in the mood for fun. We were back in our bed and breakfast early to get a good night's sleep before the long journey home the next day. Had a very bad night's sleep. Grandad gave me a very serious talking to before we went to collect Mrs. Cholmondeley. It was a funny name. It was spelled Cholmondeley, but for some weird reason it was pronounced Chumley. Now you are to behave yourself utterly with Mrs. C, said Grandad. One complaint from her, and I'll be out of my job altogether. Now, Mrs. C is a sad old lady. She's hurt her knee, so she's probably in a lot of pain, and really fussed and worried. She might be a bit sharp or snappy with us. You must not give her any cheek back. You must try to be understanding. You're basically a very kind little girl. I know you'll try your best. Grandad looked so anxious I put my arms around his neck. Don't worry, Grandad. You're a very big, kind man to take me all the way up here, especially as I mucked it all up anyway. I swear I'll be good to Mrs. Chummy Whatsits. Your job will be safe. I swear it will. I felt like swearing all the way home. Mrs. Chumley was not the slightest bit chummy. Grandad picked her up on the exact dot of 9 o'clock next morning, and she greeted him with a very sharp, "So, there you are. I've been waiting and waiting. It's simply not good enough. Well, come along, jump to it now you're here. I have a great deal of luggage." She paused to draw breath and saw me standing beside the car. "Shoo, little girl, shoo," she said, waving her crutch fiercely at me. "Don't you dare scratch that shiny car." "It's all right, madam," Grandad said quickly. "She's my granddaughter. She's coming with us." Mrs. Chumley banged the floor with the other crutch, so nearly overbalancing that Grandad had to grab hold of her. She shook him off furiously. She is certainly not coming with me. I'm not paying an extortionate amount of money for you to give free rides to half your family. I looked at Grandad helplessly. What were we going to do now? Maybe he should have hidden me in the boot, as this old boot was proving so difficult. But Grandad could be a Mr. Smoothie when he wanted. I've brought Gemma with me deliberately, madam. I thought she might prove helpful to you. I figured we'd make several stops along the way. She can fetch and carry for you and accompany you to the ladies' room. She's here simply to help you and make your journey as comfortable as possible. Grandad smiled at Mrs. Chumley. Her powdery cheeks and tight little mouth twitched slightly, as she might be considering smiling back. She didn't go quite that far, but she did summon me to her side with an imperious wave of her crutch. Come along then, child. Take my arm and make yourself useful. You can help me into the car, but just be extremely careful not to touch my poor knee, as it's excruciatingly painful. I felt ready to tug her entire leg off by the end of the journey. She nagged, she moaned, she complained continuously. She took very nearly all the big back seat, so I was hunched right up against the window, barely able to move, but she still prodded at me to make sure I made space for her poorly knee. I was making space for 100 elephants' knees, but did I protest? I didn't even mouth a word of complaint when she kicked off her nasty black-buttoned old lady shoes and flapped her horrible old lady bunion feet right in my face. I had to help her stuff her warty toes back into her shoes when we stopped at the motorway services. Then I had the most terrible task of all, assisting Mrs. Chumley in and out of the lavatory. Ah, aren't you a kind girl helping Granny? One lady cooed. I badly wanted to stuff Granny head first down the lavatory pan and pull the chain on her. Instead, I simpered sickeningly. We drove on, mile after mile. We stopped at many service stations because Mrs. Chumley seemed to have a bladder the size of a pea. We ate several meals, and Mrs. Chumley complaining bitterly at the standard of the food and spilling soup all down her massive bosom. She made me run for paper napkins and help mop it up. I still didn't say a word. Cat got your tongue? Said Mrs. Chumley. You're not a very chatty child. I like a kiddie to have a bit of spirit. Oh, not our Gemma. She's a shy little thing, good as gold, said Grandad. He then went into a coughing fit. I think he might have been laughing. When we eventually bundled the horrible old bag off to her poor daughter's house, she fumbled in her bag for her purse. Here, child, this is for you, for your help on the journey, she said, holding out her hand. She pressed 20 pence into mine, the price of just one of those dreaded visits to the toilet. Never mind, little darling. She didn't give me anything at all, said Grandad. Well, Jem, this trip has been a learning experience for both of us. I've discovered something on the drive back. I'm not sure I like it when you're being a good little girl. You're much more fun when you're being bad. Grandad didn't tell on me to Mum about the cake incident, but she could tell the visit hadn't been a total success. Mum and Dad and Callum and Jack were very tactful and didn't ask any awkward questions. Even Barking Mad sidled round and round sympathetically, the soul of canine tact. Biscuit's approach was more direct. He came rushing up to me the minute I got into school on Monday. How did you get on, Gemma? Did Alice like her cake? Did it taste yummy? I don't know, I said. I was dying to try it, but it would have meant licking it off Flora's face, and I didn't fancy that. Biscuits blinked at me. Whose? Flora? It was Alice's cake. Yeah, exactly. Only this foul girl Flora got the cake knife and acted like it was hers, so I shoved her head in it. Biscuit's mouth fell open. You are so bad, Gemma. I don't mean to be. It just sort of happens. And it's so stupid because I spoil everything. Alice and I couldn't make our birthday wish, so now I don't see why we can ever stay best friends. Yeah, you can. This boy Tim and me are great mates, and yet we only get to see each other on holiday. Alice's mum would never in a million years let me go on holiday with them. I bet this Flora's mum wouldn't be too keen either. You are one scary girl. Biscuits, you're not scared of me, are you? Yeah, look, I'm shaking in my shoes, said Biscuits, wobbling about. You're the girl who stalked me right into the boys' toilets and wanted to beat me up. I didn't really mean it. Well, I don't think I did. I was just a little bit mad at the time. You're always a little bit mad, but that's okay. Nobody's perfect. You're generally quite good at acting perfect. How come you're always so nice, Biscuit? Oh, it's just my ace personality, said Biscuits, grinning. Well, I don't want to spoil things and make you big-headed, so I'll shut up now. Shall we practice our Fat Larry project? You can be him, like I said, and I'll read out the recipes while you demonstrate, okay? I've got a better idea, said Biscuits. We're both going to be Fat Larry. Come round to my house after school. Bring your granddad. My granny specially invited him. Just wait till you see what my mum's got for you. And that is where we will leave part 10 of Best Friends by Jacqueline Wilson. I'll be back soon with the last part of this fantastic story and lots more videos coming your way very, very soon. If you would like to subscribe or hit a like, that's much appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.